Hey, I'd like to talk to you guys today about working from reference, in particular as it pertains to character design. Now, a good reference gathering session can be kind of like coming across a dictionary full of words that you've never heard before. Then studying that dictionary, understanding the words, and eventually using them in conversation. Now, drawing from reference, studying reference, has a great many benefits to an artist. You can communicate much more clearly with your audience, even if their language, their spoken language, is completely alien to you and yours to them. There are symbols and imagery which transcend those barriers that exist in other forms of communication. Working from reference can help the artist understand, explore, and finally use those new phrases in the visual language when they're creating their designs. Um, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you get something out of it, and I hope you come back for more later.
Today, I'm developing a character for the storybook I'm working on. This particular character is a Baitler eagle. I needed to design a bunch of different bird characters for a folk tale set in Nigeria, so I embarked on a reference gathering session. After a Google image search for birds of Nigeria and birds of West Africa, I was awash in striking creatures. So many beautiful options to draw inspiration from. This colorful fellow caught my eye, and I needed some angry looking eagles and hawks for the story, so I filled my monitor with several images from my reference gathering session and jumped in. Beginning with gesture lines to explore the energy of the pose and construction lines to help understand the overall volume of the character and its construction, I begin to explore the subject. I've just figured out by looking at the reference that the feathers coming off the side of the beak can be used to push the neck, the underside of the neck, back into the background a little bit by creating that layering effect. It's important information to the viewer to help them understand the form. This is really what this section of the work is about, is exploring this character and looking for those little phrases in the visual language that will convey important information about this character, about your subject's construction, the relationships between the various parts that make up that whole creature or character. This is your opportunity to really explore, to make mistakes and learn about the character in these rough sketches, these observational sketches, and hopefully learn a lot about how you can convey the important information. Here I'm trying to figure out how the shapes of feathers, the different groupings of feathers, the different sizes and color patterns can be used to help describe the form in a simplified way that doesn't require me to render every feather. Here you can see that I have moved on to the face. I'm trying to understand a bit more about the structure of the head, the structure of the face, and I'm looking at a close-up image, reference image, and basically just start trying to understand the relationship between the various facial features, the sort of natural expression that the animal has, and through exploring the information from the reference image, I'm attempting to ingrain in my mind what are those elements, those visual elements that need to be there in order for the viewer to understand that this is an eagle, that this is a bird of prey. And I'm still trying to understand the form. Here I've just noticed, I'm working on understanding the volume, how the neck meets the beak. The feathers in the neck kind of tuck in and then come back towards the viewer as it turns into the beak. It creates an opportunity for some foreshortening and layering to create some depth, and just give the viewer a bit more information about the volumes at play, the relationship between those two shapes, the beak and the neck. Of course, I'm still trying to understand how the feathers can be used to help depict the volume accurately. This bird has some somewhat strange groupings of feathers, feathers of different sizes and textures and colors. So at this point, with this back view of the wings kind of beginning to unfurl, I'm spending a bit of time trying to understand those groupings of feathers. Um, there's several colors and some interesting breakup in the way that they're distributed. There's a couple groups of dark black feathers along the back that run parallel to the spine, and those will come into play later as I try and develop a shorthand for this creature. So you can see that now this is me beginning to stylize this character, beginning to do some actual character designs rather than observational sketches. And here I am using all that information that I learned during the observational sketches to try and begin to stylize the character but not lose the relevant information. You can see that the way that the feathers are overlapping with one another and wrapping in underneath the beak at the corner of the mouth, that is a direct result of some of the observations I made earlier. So they're already coming into play. You can also see here that I did not show all of the various rough sketches just for the sake of expediency, for keeping the video brief. Trying to make these a bit more succinct. So hopefully I'm successful at that this time. The pose I'm cleaning up now really is to try and understand more thoroughly how those groups of different feathers relate to one another, how they interact with one another, and also to see how that shoulder structure is when it's foreshortened and the wings are tucked in. You can see that I am now doing sort of a profile view based off of the sketch that's there above it where he's hunched over. This is beginning to push the stylization a bit more and see how much I can flare out those feathers around the face. Again, going back in here and messing around with the groupings of feathers to try and get a better understanding of just their relationship with one another. It's also a chance, each of these poses, going over and working on them, is a chance to explore a little bit of the character and deviate from the reference a bit, play with eye placement and stylization of the wings and feathers. So at this point, I've kind of jumped ahead here, and at this point I'm really beginning to pose this character out and kind of just go completely off reference and just do some poses for the actual design character. You can see I started there by doing more of a bird-like pose where I gestured the wings up. I was going to have him sort of flapping his wings and yelling, but I decided to try it with a bit more anthropomorphic sort of hand on the hip and pointing at the ground, demanding that somebody come. Sorry, like he's yelling, like, "Come here, you little," and so I'm starting to play with the posing. You can see that I'm getting pretty comfortable with depicting the relationship between the head and the upper body, and the legs to the lower body, the overlap of the sort of side tail feathers and the side of the leg. At this point, I'm comfortable with how this animal's kind of broken up in its groupings of feathers, and because of that, I can simplify it down into a simple shape for the torso, and basically all the pieces of it now are I'm working on how much can I simplify it, and playing with the style at this point to figure how much detail I want to include, how much information needs to be there. I think that probably there's too much information still. Even at the end of this video, there'll be some room for distilling it down even further and getting a bit even more precise and economic with the information I'm putting on the page. But at this point, it's still really exploring the stylization, exploring that visual language. I've learned about the relationship between the different parts of this creature, and now I'm trying to implement them. I've practiced those. I've studied those phrases in the visual language. I have practiced using them, and now I am actually trying to say them out loud, to say them with confidence. And this is kind of the whole process of working with reference when designing a character. You can always look at the reference as well, go back to the reference when you run into a problem. This is a good example. So as I mentioned earlier, there's those two sort of groups of black feathers that run down the back of the body. And you can kind of see that line coming off the side of his head right now. This where I'm filling in with black right now. At this point, I'm still not really clear, 100% clear, the shape of that group of feathers. How is it? What shape is best going to serve this character design? And you'll see me come back to it in a minute and come up with a solution that I think works pretty well. So, and that solution came from going back to the reference and having another look to understand what the relationship with that group of feathers is with the other groups of feathers around it. What does it say about the form, and is it something where I'm forcing it? I need to just do something more stylized and not worry too much about the reference. You can see that I basically just filled in that negative space and made it more of a direct line, less variation in the flow of that shape. Makes it clearer and easier to read. So this last pose, I wanted to play with that visual element of having the arms crossed because of the sort of repetition of form it has with the feathers kind of splayed out across in front of him. And also, this character is meant to be sort of the least impressed with the protagonist in the story. I guess you could call him protagonist. So he is a little scoldy and angry with the guy. So again, this is not just exploration of the structure and the actual appearance of the character, but also using these poses to describe some of the actual personality of the character. At this point, I have some poses. I've got a better idea of who this character is and how the visual elements interact with one another. A lot more comfortable with them and ready to do some poses and final cleanup.
There you have it. Some thoughts on working from reference when designing a character. Now, I hope you guys got something out of this video, and I really hope you'll subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be doing videos every Sunday, and the next video is one I'm pretty excited about. It's going to be cleaning up a character from a project that I have been working on for a while, and that is really close to being released. So tune in for that, and have a good one. Subscribe.